What is up, everybody? The long anticipated Godzilla vs. Kong finally gets a trailer released as both Disney's Pixar Popcorn and The White Tiger released this past Friday. I'm Darius Delsoin.
And I'm Joe Acierno. Welcome to Cinema Unchained.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Cinema Unchained, as we said before. But again, so just to top it off of what we'll be discussing this episode, Godzilla vs. Kong, the trailer finally came out. Justice League is now officially 4 hours long, and of course, The White Tiger premiered this past Friday, and that was quite an interesting movie. To start off this episode, Joe, Godzilla vs. Kong just came out.
Yeah. Just before we get too much into Godzilla vs. Kong, just don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like and hit the bell to get all notifications for new content. So, yeah, Godzilla vs. Kong. Godzilla vs. Kong finally got a trailer release. Over the last couple days, they've been sprinkling like little clips, like little tidbits here and there, but like now we finally got like a full-length trailer release. And I watched this, and I'm kind of excited. And the first thing I thought to myself was, wow, I gotta watch Godzilla. I gotta watch Godzilla King of the Monsters. I saw Kong Skull Island on a plane a while ago, and I think I fell asleep for most of it. So I think I might have to watch that one again. So
Understandable.
because like here's the thing, I'm not expecting to like get attached to like any of the human characters or whatnot when it comes to going into Godzilla versus Kong. But I figure, as far as some kind of personal attachment to, the creatures involved, okay, maybe I should watch those other movies just for that alone. Because I have an odd feeling that with all these movies, you're not there to see the human characters or just a bunch of pretty familiar faces just thrown in there to, I guess, just serve as, some kind of, middle ground or just, some filler between all the monster action and stuff like that. But all in all, I'm pretty excited for this one. Again, I don't have the biggest attachment to the MonsterVerse in the world, but they're just already... Yeah, I know. Shot through the heart, and I'm the only one to blame. But there just seems something, very big about this, and I'm looking forward to see exactly, is the spectacle going to really live up to the anticipation?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, definitely. For me, I've been a Godzilla fan for a good chunk of my life as well. My dad was heavily into Godzilla, so that kind of how I got introduced to it. And so the thing is with the recent Godzilla movies, the 2013-2014 one with Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen, that one, my issue with the recent Godzilla movies has always been they heavily focus on the human characters, which I understand. I guess you want to still have some sort of human attachment, but at the same time, this is freaking Godzilla. I'm coming in to see some monster action. Like the first one, I remember didn't really have a lot, and they kept building the tension, but it still kept falling flat for me. And then with Godzilla, the other one, Kings of Monsters, I won't spoil it for you in case you haven't seen it. Wait, have you seen it, Joe? No, right?
I have not seen Godzilla
You
King of
have
the
not seen
Monsters,
it.
no.
I like that more than the first one, mainly because I got to see some classic Godzilla characters like King Ghidorah, Mothra, all these characters in modern day with fully realized in CGI. So, just as a Godzilla fan and as well as a King Kong fan, seeing that these two icons are clashing, it's kind of insane. And that's how I felt with BVS, despite that movie's flaws. For me, for Kong versus Godzilla, I'm going in to see the monster action, and just from the trailer, it looks spectacular. Holy cow!
It looks pretty big, and it's funny, building on that point of what you're saying about Godzilla and Kong clashing. Is it me, or in the trailer did they kind of make it seem like Kong was a quote unquote good guy?
Yeah,
That's the vibe that I got from it. Which again, like I said, I haven't really seen in full the other films in the MonsterVerse. But I thought it was just supposed to be neutral. Here's the thing. I don't know. I never figured, who they were going to be rooting for.
Yeah.
I just thought, it was just all the people would just be like, oh, my God, these giant things are fighting. What do we do? We're fucked. What do we do?
No, yeah, definitely. The thing with even Godzilla, the first two movies, they always portrayed Godzilla as the hero. And for this one, seeing this one as he's more of a sort of villain, as kind of took a 180. And so, narratively speaking, as well, like if this is part of the universe, you have to explain why he's acting this way. Because if you're just gonna say, "Oh, they're just fighting and he's just acting this way because he is," that's not good enough for me personally. Because again, you have to build that narrative thread. It's a universe for a reason. So I'm hoping they explain why. And again, King Kong as a like I was initially thinking that, oh, okay, maybe these two are gonna fight, they're gonna hash things out, and it's like a bigger threat's coming, like Space Godzilla or something. Who knows? um but to
Or
me
Magma
really,
Kong or some shit like that.
yeah, exactly. But to me from the trailer it really looks like no, it's these two fighting. It looks like there is a bigger picture going on, but we don't know exactly just yet. But again, just overall, this film, I am super stoked to see it. I was already excited, but now I'm even more excited. And now that they push it to March, yeah, let's go. Let's
Yeah,
go.
that's
That's all we
another
got
thing
to say.
too, because it's really interesting what's going on with like release dates for movies this year. Because like you have this one that's getting pulled up, but I just found out about A Quiet Place 2 getting delayed to September. I just found out about No Time to Die getting delayed to October. I'm kind of pissed about both, but it's just like everything just seems like so all over the place. But speaking of theater releases, are you going to see this in theaters, or are you just going to tune in straight to HBO Max? Because there's another one that's doing that simultaneous release.
I think I have to see this in theaters. Like, I want to see it in theaters for sure. I mean, it's Godzilla versus Kong. I don't think I can watch that at home. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, probably, but like, just that theater experience and seeing these two icons just going at each other, it has to be seen in theaters. Just like how BVS, I had to see that in theaters too. Avengers Endgame had to see that in theaters. All these movies, they're movies for a reason. So it's like you have to see it in the theater. I mean, you don't have to, obviously, but just the scope and what the cameras they film on and etc. Like IMAX and everything, you have to see it on the big screen. In my opinion, that's just
Absolutely.
me personally.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely seeing this in the theaters. I'm not sure exactly what the IMAX situation is with this particular film, but if I can possibly see it in IMAX, then I will. And again, I'm definitely kicking myself now for not seeing Godzilla King of the Monsters in theaters when I could have, because I know I had a couple friends like egging me on. Then I read the reviews. I fell into the trap of reading the reviews and be like,
Mm,
I don't know, is it gonna be worth my time? Because I think there were a couple other things coming out at that time that I prioritized a bit more. But yeah, like I said, I'm kicking myself for not watching Godzilla King of the Monsters in theaters. So I don't think I'm going to be making that same mistake with this one. Once again, this is coming from someone who's not the. I can't say I dislike the MonsterVerse. Again,
yeah.
I haven't really seen much of it, but I am intrigued. And watching this made me realize, like, okay, I got some homework to do with these other three movies that seem to be building up to Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, the movie theater experience, that's in very questionable tales right now, despite because of the
Yeah.
pandemic. But I'm just hoping movies like Godzilla vs Kong, movies like Black Widow, really help people go back to the theaters because these are huge movies. They're meant
These are
to,
Big
in
Ten
my
pictures.
opinion.
They need these. They need
Yeah,
these.
exactly. They need these. AMC needs these. Everyone involved in basically the cinema production and putting it out in theaters, they need this to recoup their money back. And I'm just hoping this is enough to entice people in. Again, this is gonna be releasing on HBO Max, so people might be like, you know what, let me pay the $15 for HBO Max, see it there. Oh hey, there's a bunch of other movies that came out recently as well, because now we're moving into February, then we'll be moving into March, and then hey, if they get Godzilla versus Monsters and it's like, oh wait, the new Mortal Kombat's coming out, I'll keep my subscription for that. That's gonna be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of sad, and I'm just wondering, are these again? Like I understand that these film production and film distribution companies have to look out for themselves as well, but are they really just flipping a giant middle finger to the movie theaters by simultaneously releasing it in both? So I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see exactly what happens with that. I can imagine Godzilla versus Kong being one of the movies that bring people back to the theaters, but again,
For
I just
sure.
don't know for sure. It's really tough to predict at this point, like how people are going to be feeling about everything with the pandemic, who's going to be comfortable going back to the theater. So yeah, what do you guys think? What do you think about the trailer? Are you confident in how Godzilla vs Kong is going to go down? Do you think that is going to be enough to bring people back to the theaters? I'm I can speak for myself, and I think Darius agrees with me when we'd like to know exactly what it is that you're thinking as far as, Godzilla versus Kong as a whole and just the whole situation, the whole state of going to the theaters versus streaming in general. So, moving on to Pixar Popcorn. So basically, Pixar Popcorn was a bunch of, quote, bite-sized Pixar shorts just released on Disney Plus. And when I read bite-sized, I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, okay, like, they're just trying to be cute with the whole bite-sized thing. Because I'm thinking back to those Disney Pixar shorts that you'd always watch in the theater before seeing a Pixar feature. And those were like, about like 5 minutes long. No, these are literally bite-sized. These are literally 2 minutes apiece. So,
Yeah.
Darius, what exactly did you think of this little collection of shorts here?
Yeah, for me, I knew it was gonna be a short, and for me, I was predicting, oh, maybe like 5 minutes each, 5 to 10, maybe, those are pretty bite sized enough that you can watch on your phone. But when we watched it, because it was my dad and I, we watched the first episode. I didn't realize it was literally like a minute or two. I was like, wow, these
Yeah.
are really short, but they were engaging enough, and that's what I really liked. Like I honestly did not expect to like these shorts as much as I did. Some were definitely some misses for me, but there are definitely some standouts. And
Yeah.
definitely for obvious reasons. If especially if you like Toy Story 4 and a certain duo.
Yep. Yeah, both there are two of those. There are two of those, and both of them are funny as hell. They were a great duo in Toy Story 4, and again, like they had enough to carry their own short. And again, I'm saying like, oh, they had enough to carry their own short. Like, they're 2 minutes apiece, but they're still fun
Exactly.
and engage. They're still fun and funny enough. There are those two. There are the two from the Incredibles universe
Which I
that I
like.
thought were both hysterical. And again, just like going back to the whole Pixar short thing. When it came to watching those in the theater, they were always just like, a great little surprise
Yeah, for
as far
sure.
as like, just like they're a nice little warm up right before you watch the actual movie, and I always enjoyed those. And it's funny, like I always like, there were a lot of times where I forgot that they were going to be playing those. I'm like, oh right, there's a Pixar movie, we're going to see one of these now. All right, nice. But even though when it came to these, and how these are all like, again, just like, quote, bite-sized shorts with characters and universes that have already been established, and again, they're just nice little treats.
Exactly.
I don't know if they're not like, they're not like, reinventing the wheel, but they did exactly what they had to do. And again, in this collection, in each individual short, some more so than others, found a way to be charming and fun and above all endearing. Like I said, some were definitely better than others. And like I said, the Incredibles one definitely stood out. The ones with Ducky and Bunny stood out. But like again, don't expect to spend too much time watching all these.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it was a nice little 20-25 minutes for me. So
Yeah, like each single
I
one of
enjoyed it.
them were like roughly like what 2 to 3 minutes long.
Yeah,
Roughly two. Some were even really short, like a minute. And so watching them, I was because my expectations were like, okay, maybe some 10 minute stuff with some narrative bits in there to show maybe like after Toy Story 4, what happens maybe with Woody, Buzz Lightyear, that sort of thing. But watching it, I was like, and this is just a fun little treat just to have, just to watch.
yeah,
Literally to have maybe some popcorn to go with it if you happen to
yeah,
have popcorn with you.
yeah,
So like for me watching it, I was like, this is fun. This is a lot of, and I didn't expect to laugh as much as I was.
yeah.
That's for sure because there were definitely some, like the Incredibles one. I was dying of
Yep.
of lot laughing. Ducky and Bunny, Keegan Michael Key and Jordan Peele are just such a great duo that like it even in animated form, it's amazing. Just their back and forth, and I absolutely love. And I'm happy there was two of those, because those are kind of my favorite characters in Toy Story 4. I'm sorry for all the classic fans. I'm just saying right now, those are my favorites. So seeing them back, especially in these shorts, I thought was really cool, and the back and forth again. Even the all of these were, and even the Cars one, I didn't expect to like as much either with the
Hmm.
parallel parking. That was funny.
Yeah, yeah. That one was cute too. And again, it's funny how like most of these shorts were silent, but then you go to the Ducky and Bunny ones from Toy Story 4, and it's just rapid fire dialogue. And again, like
Exactly.
I don't think it was scripted. There's a part of me that feels like it might have been scripted, but
Yeah, it
maybe
didn't
not.
feel
And it's
scripted
just
at
like
all.
these two guys just being able to riff off each other the way they do, and it's again just rapid fire back and forth. So like again, like just when you think that like it's going in a certain direction, think of like, oh okay, like these are all going to be silent. Then out of nowhere come these two guys, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
wait, that makes a lot more sense.
Yep, definitely. I mean, there's really not a lot to say other than these are fun, short, bite-sized clips of classic Disney, Pixar animation that we all know and love. You have some from
Yeah.
Coco, some from Cars, some from Finding Nemo and Toy Story. Like there was just
Yeah.
a slew of content, and honestly, at the end, I kind of wanted more. I wanted more of these Pixar shorts because they were just so engaging and so, uh, just so well crafted. Really, like there's really not
Mm-hmm.
much to say other than if you guys are listening, watching this, really check it out. It's just a
It's like,
fun little
yeah, it's like if
thing
you
to
just
do.
want like a little something to do, like a little something to treat yourself with, nothing like you got to invite the guys over for a movie night,
Yeah.
but just like a little treat for yourself, then like it's a nice little distraction, nice little tiny distraction from like everything that's going on in the world. Um, so yeah, I'm curious as far, or really we're curious as far as like what you thought of the Pixar popcorn, little shorts. Again, leave just type your mind, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And before we move on to Justice League, if you have not gotten a chance to, give this video a like, channel a subscription on both YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify Podcasts. And if you're on YouTube, hit the bell to get all notifications. So, Justice League, Darius, I know you're pretty pumped to talk about this one.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of the Pixar stuff that we just talked about, Pixar Popcorn, those were short and engaging enough. And it's like, I got what I needed. With Justice League now, and quite a bit of backlash we're hearing online, is that it's going to be 4 hours long as a movie. They're not going to do episodic, going to be just a 4 hour long movie.
Oh, they're not
And
doing that anymore.
no,
That-
it's a 4 hour long movie. And so, obviously, a lot of people were kind of upset about this, which is understandable, but also at the same time, it's a movie. That's kind of the
Yeah.
point. It's supposed to be pretty long. Avengers Endgame, that was like 2 hours long. Infinity War, that was 2 hours and 20 minutes long. But the thing is, and this is where I want us to really talk about it, is that it's not the fact that Justice League is long, but is it too long? Like to you,
I mean,
Joe,
I
is
think
that
honestly,
too long?
I think when it comes to the length thing, I really do think it depends on the film. And again, there is a question of it before and like after you watch the movie, because like I know a lot of times when I find out about a movie being like really long, like I'll never forget I was at a friend's birthday party and I just happened to see on my phone on my IMDb feed that Interstellar, and again this is years back, that Interstellar's runtime docked in at like 2 hours and 49 minutes,
Yeah.
and I'm like yes, here we go. Then fast forward like about 5 years to The Irishman, and I find out that one's like 3.5 hours long. Yes, here we go. And again, coming out of both of those films.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of people disagree with me, but coming out of both of those films, I wouldn't change the length. I wouldn't change the length. I thought that like the length was well earned, and I felt like there was a lot of ground to cover in both of those. And it didn't feel too long, and it didn't move too slowly either. Because that's another
Yeah.
thing too. Like certain movies have to feel long. They have to feel slow. There are
Yeah, there's a
certain movies
certain
that feel like
rhythm
an
to it.
adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as there's like a rhythm to it, but at the same time, there's certain movies that just have to feel slow, like the Lord of the Rings movies. These are epic. These are epic adventures. If these movies were like an hour and a half apiece, would they have the same impact? In my mind, no.
No. Yeah.
Something massive like those have to be 3.5 hours long, if you really want to just like get everything that you need to get, cover everything that you need to cover. But as far as Justice League, again, that's I never really like. I've said like a few times on the show before too. I'm not the biggest comic book reader in the world at all. So as far as like what the length is going to be, or if it's going to be too long, I guess that's something that I would have to decide after, after I watch the movie too. And going back to like what I was saying about like the lengths of certain movies and whatnot, and how people bitch and moan about it. Not for nothing, a lot of these people that complain about movies being long also will sit down and binge Netflix for hours on end.
Yeah.
So I don't know how seriously to take the word of some of these people that are complaining about the length. They said the same thing, like, "Oh, The Irishman's 3.5 hours long." Really? How much time did you spend watching Stranger Things, binging it all in a row? I mean, come on, give
Exactly.
me a
Or
break.
Daredevil, all in a row.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Like for me, when I heard that it was long, I was like, you know what? Okay. I mean, for me, I think the length isn't that important. Is really, did the film do enough to entice you and grab you in for the full ride? You
yes,
know, and and one of my favorite, a great comic book film that I thought was, I didn't think it was long, but really it felt fast, was Infinity War. That was time run wise, it's a pretty long movie, but how it felt like an hour and a half, maybe less,
And
because that movie was fast. All the scenes were impactful. It hit, and they just kept moving forward. So I
yep.
think with Justice League, I think films in general is always going to be sort of that, what's the flow like? What's that rhythm like? Are we engaged enough? Are we engaged enough to the point where maybe the director and editor don't have to drag out certain scenes? Because I think that's really what it comes down to with these films and their runtimes, is that, is it engaging? Is it impactful enough to the point? And like, can you get to the point and move on from there and still develop the character, still develop the narrative and the plots and everything that is makes the film what it is. Because for me, 4 hours in length, that's not bad.
And again, you're also the guy who did the 22-hour Marvel movie marathon. So, like, again, like, I don't. You might be you might be a bit too conditioned
Exactly. I
for a
mean,
4-hour movie.
like personally, I've binged a bunch of shows for like days on out with no problem at all. So, and when you take the Netflix shows, for example, each episode is about an hour long, right? Let's take Daredevil, about an hour long each, right? And there's about 8 to 10 episodes. I've watched the entire Daredevil season 1 in one sitting. But again, the characters, the story was that engaging that I didn't think about the time. If you have to
Yeah.
think about the time, then maybe the film didn't do its job for you. And again, it's all
Ex-
personal. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a film's length being 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours long. Because if you can get used to binge watching on Netflix, you can probably get used to a movie. It's just a matter of, is the story engaging enough for you? That's really what it
yeah.
comes down to for me. So.
Yeah. Again, like I said, like as far as length, what happens in between the time the movie starts and the time the movie finishes is the biggest deciding factor as far as like whether or not the movie length was worth it. Because again, like one of the movies that I talked about for our worst films of 2020 was a little indie film called Arkansas, and the movie's about 2 hours long. That's like average length for a movie. I was limping to finish that movie. I was
Yeah.
limping across the finish line for that one. I could not get through it. So I guess we'll just have to see exactly what happens as far as that. And to anyone that's listening, what do you think of like the length of Justice League? What do you think? What do you think of long movies in general? Like, what's considered like too long of a movie for you that you read that runtime and you're like, I don't know about this one. That you're a little
Yeah.
intimidated to actually sit down and watch it. So
Because I also
we'll
want to
see.
just add a bit more context to this discussion as well. I think that's how people are looking at it as well is, let's say, for example, if you can binge watch through, let's say, a series on Netflix, like you said. I mean, you can obviously watch a 3 hour movie if you were in the theater, if you watch The
Hmm.
Irishman, if you watch all these films. So that's, again, it's not the problem. I think some people are kind of mixed up as well, where it's like, okay, if I was in the theater, I don't want to be in the dark or whatever, watching this movie for 3 hours long, but you already do that at home per se.
Yeah.
It's kind of counterintuitive in certain arguments I've seen, but again, for me, and even obviously for you as well, we kind of on the same page as, like, I don't think the length is that important, and we'll be getting into the length of a movie as well in our review of White Tiger pretty soon. But in general, it's like, if it's engaging enough, then there's no problem. You
Yeah.
shouldn't really have a problem. Maybe there can be parts where, okay, you could have shortened this up a bit, this up. Again, something more concise and impactful is always better and great, I think, in general.
Hmm.
But again, certain themes and certain stories, you have to drag certain things out, in my eyes.
You have to
Like, you
flesh it out.
can't.
You need more time to flesh it out, whether it's a story or just like the emotion of a particular scene. Like, you can't just be so quick to cut. Like, you have to let certain things play out. You have to let certain things
Exactly.
just stand. So,
Exactly, and I think that's why some people prefer series now over movies, because it's episodic. They can catch on whenever the impact is still there, or they rewatch the previous one, then they watch the next one. So that's why I think series are definitely more prevalent in a lot of people's lifestyles, because it's more convenient as well compared to a movie.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
So, well, when does Justice League come out again?
sometime in March. Apparently, there's not an exact release date, but it's words are coming around that it's supposed to be March. We don't know for sure exactly.
Got it. Okay. And again, that's of course going to be an HBO Max release. Is that going to go into theaters as well? This one?
As of right now, no.
Okay,
But
I
I
didn't
have
think
been
so.
hearing Snyder was trying to get it to theaters, which I think
Okay.
is a bad move. I'll just say
Yeah,
that
because
right
like
now.
here's the thing. Like there's certain movies. There are certain movies that you can get away with, of course. That like it's like we were just saying before with our previous topic that you need to bring people back to the theaters. But do I think a 4-hour movie with a franchise that hasn't had the best track record,
Mm-hmm.
the movie to do that, my gut's telling me no. Because here's the thing: Avengers Endgame, of course, was 3 hours long, but by and large, people love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They
Exactly.
don't mind sitting through 3 hours of Avengers Endgame. The DCEU, different story. That reaction is where that reception has been a bit more polarizing, leaning more towards the negative side, to say the least. So again, I think them thinking that they can pull off a 4-hour movie theatrical release and expect people to come back to the theaters for this one, I think it might be a little arrogant on their part, but that's just
Yeah.
me.
I don't think they will. I think they've learned their lesson enough.
Yeah. Just like, it's just like, all right, like, baby steps, pal. Like, you're still getting some kind of credibility back for this franchise, if you even get it back at all.
Oh yeah.
So, so all right, so to cap the show off, we are going to review the new Netflix film, The White Tiger, which follows an ambitious Indian driver as he works to break himself from his life of servitude to a life of prosperity and wealth. The film is directed by Raman Bahrani, and I'm so sorry about the names I'm about to butcher from the cast. The film stars Adarsh Gaurav, Roy Kumar Rao, and Priyanka Chopra, also known as the wife of Nick Jonas. So Darius, what'd you think of The White Tiger?
Um. Honestly, this movie I really liked. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did because it reminded me of Parasite, and
Interesting.
and it mainly reminded me of Parasite because this film really tackled the ideas of showing the socioeconomic statuses and how different they can be amongst poor and the rich, and how how the rich see the poor, and etc. So I really liked The White Tiger for that, and that's why it reminded me of Parasite, because Parasite also tackled those issues as well. I mean,
Did you
Parasite
like
was
Parasite? Because
I
you
love
said it
Parasite.
reminded you of Parasite. You love Parasite.
I
Okay, yeah. Because you
To
said it
me, I
reminded me.
think that
Because you
was like
said
a
you weren't
flawless
sure.
movie.
Yeah, honestly, that's a phenomenal movie. Like I walked out of there, I'm like, wow, I just watched something that I'd never seen before. But anyway, back
Yeah.
back to White Tiger. You were saying?
Yeah, exactly. And so it was White Tiger, and one of the things I also liked was that we're seeing the Indian culture as well,
Hmm.
more prevalent in America and shown. Like now it's on Netflix. Like that is awesome to see more Indian representation as well. And so with that in mind, I thought White Tiger. It felt more. I really liked it, but it definitely felt like the entire movie wasn't a giant act one, and the third and the climatic was really like a rushed act three.
Yeah, that's it's funny because like here's the thing. There was something that I was feeling as far as like the overall feeling for the film, and there is a suspenseful feel to it. It's not very good, but there's a very
Yeah.
suspenseful feel to it. But that's interesting that you say that. And again, I couldn't put it any better myself. Like I said, it's an act one. It just felt like it was just like building certain things to like a certain payoff. Like it didn't really feel like an act two. So that's interesting that you say that. I wish I could have worded that better myself. But going back to what you're saying, as far as we're seeing Indian culture. Like one of the strengths of this film is that I really did feel like immersed in all of India.
Yeah.
And as far as like contrasting the different parts of India, some of the more wealthier areas as opposed to some of the poorer areas, I'm like, wow, okay, like I definitely feel like I'm there, and especially with some of the parts of like the more impoverished villages, I'm like, I feel like I'm there, and I'm not sure I want to be. So like,
Yeah, definitely.
it felt like a tough watch at certain points too. Like I said, like nothing's gruesome, but like just seeing like what these people have to live through in these certain areas, it's kind of eye opening. It's just, and again, this movie takes place like about like what 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So to just think that like there's this kind of impoverishment within like relatively recent history in a country as big as India, it's kind of tough to swallow at certain points too.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely offers a different perspective. And one of the things I also really liked about this film was that you had one Indian character, the main protagonist, Balram, who was from the poor
Hmm.
area. Then you had the other guy who is much richer. But then you also have
Ashok, the master.
Priyanka's character who is from America. She was from India, but she moved to America. So now you're getting three different almost Indian perspectives. One that doesn't care about tradition all that much. The other that is a bit freak in the middle, and then the main one who is just bonkers mentally, just all over the place, trying to figure out exactly like sort of what he wants and how he's trying to get to a certain level. Like the ending, I didn't expect it to go that way. Like I that tossed me in for the loop, but also because the ending just felt so immediate, that's why to me it felt like a giant act 1, and the end was a rushed act 3, cuz the pacing in the act 3 the really felt a bit off. Like they were really trying to. It's like at certain points they were trying to get to the point, but then they kept dragging out certain sections where it's like, okay, we get it. We don't need to see too much of that. But again, this
Yeah.
film really wanted to put you in India, put you in the rich, the poor, that sort of thing, and I really like that. Was it? Did I listen? And of course, I brought up the comparison to Parasite. Did I like it more than Parasite? No, I like Parasite
Absolutely
way
not. Not
more
even
than
close.
this one.
Not
Um,
even close.
yeah, so like just in general, just these three different ideals battling all each other, real and with the main character Ballroom trying to basically absorb all of this in, and he sort of it's like at points he is more of a passive character than an active character, but then it starts to pick up towards the end, which is like, I wish that was earlier. Like I wish he had more self awareness to this earlier. But again, the premise of this film is to build this character in a sense where he's absorbing all this information. He doesn't know exactly what to do with it just yet. He's just on it for the ride, you know. And then to at a certain point he starts to become a bit more active, and then all of a sudden they crank it up to 380 and it's like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All
You know,
right."
it's funny too. It's funny too because like here's the thing, he's like at his core is this like sweet like mild mannered guy,
Yeah.
but the characters like this guy Balram as far as like and the masters really that he's working with and like how they bounce off each other, you kind of notice the impact or really the influence that they have on him. You see how he
Yep.
changes like as he starts to get like a bit more I guess prospect or really a bit more influence himself. Like he kind of climbs up, in the quote unquote, caste system there too, right? Like the societal caste system there as well. And you see like, how he treats certain people once that starts to happen
Mhm.
as well. So that's very interesting too. And even just like, who he is as opposed to like, the main master that he really serves and has the most contact with. Their relationship I thought was very intriguing to watch because I'm thinking to myself like, oh man, like, I can't believe like, he would do that to him, but I'm like, oh wow, like, maybe he's not such like a bad guy. So that constant back and forth is like, whether or not Balram, should do something to screw this guy over or like, shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's like a tennis match going back and forth. I'm like, he should should he though? It was it was just really
Exactly. It's
it
like,
was
yeah, I
very
want to
intriguing to
do it,
watch them
but
go back and forth, to watch that dynamic, to watch that watch that dynamic is what I meant to say. Watch them go back and forth with each other.
yeah, definitely. Like one of the things that also stood out to me was that he was developing in a very slow way, because again,
Hmm.
this character, he's interpreting and trying to take everything in, and then you start seeing, okay, he's acting a certain way because of this guy. Because I saw that pretty early on that he was sort of starting to change in his actions, and I like that. But then again, at certain points, it's like, okay, this is dragging a bit too long. We get it. Let's
Hmm.
try to get back on track. Like I said, I think the pacing of this film is probably going to be the weakest point, because this is an extremely and we talked about Justice League being 4 hours long, and how is it engrossing and enticing enough. This film took me out of the experience quite a few times, where I did have to look at my phone. I'm like, oh my god, I'm only 35 minutes in. I'm only an
Yeah.
hour in. Oh Jesus.
Yeah, I feel
um,
like the movie's about just like a tiny bit over 2 hours. I think it's like 2 hours, 5 minutes long. It probably could have been a bit shorter. There are certain threads that I felt like could have maybe been afforded to be cut. And it's
yeah,
funny. It's
definitely.
something else I just thought of too. The fourth wall breaking, and I just want to get your opinion on it. But before we do, the fourth wall breaking, he's basically like typing an email to like the Chinese prime minister, and I'm thinking to myself like when he first starts doing that in the movie, I'm thinking to myself like, oh, all right, is this a part of the movie production where they have to appeal to China somehow? Because like how every movie has to do
Yeah,
that now, they have to
yeah,
mention China like some gleaming light. then he kind of talks about like them being like godless communists like here and there. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe not, maybe
Yeah,
maybe they're not
I
trying to
didn't
kiss
get
China's
that.
ass in this one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that was really just we're seeing because they essentially showed the end in the beginning, in certain ways. And so for me, when I was watching that, I was at first I was like, okay, what is this? But then when I started watching the film, I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. But just in general, this was really him almost coming out of his shell. Really, this is him
Yep,
becoming his
the
own
White Tiger.
person, even though he could be brutal at times,
Hmm.
and he's being the white, the white tiger, and how even symbolically how the white tiger was played out in this film, I thought was great as well. Again, this movie definitely had a lot of great moments. The only one of the biggest faults for me was really the pacing. I felt like
Yeah,
I
there
was
were
in
times
India. I
where
felt like I was with the culture, with these characters, with the ideals. The dynamic between everyone just felt so fluid and organic. It's just the
it's palpable.
pacing. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's just the pacing threw me off quite a few times to the point where I had to check the time.
Yeah, yeah, like there were definitely a few things there that I agree with you on. I gotta say the three main performances were very strong. This kind of ties into the whole fourth wall breaking, narration part, the voiceover narration in the film.
I like that.
There's a point where there's a point towards the very end where he starts addressing certain people, and you see him addressing certain people on screen. And I'm not sure how I feel about that because I'm like, this. It kind of threw me off because it's like, okay, like why is he randomly talking to this person now about all this? It kind of threw me out of there. It kind of felt like
True.
it felt like a cheap copy of like what they did at the end of Goodfellas. Like, no, I'm not spoiling it. The movie's 31 years old. If you haven't seen Goodfellas, get out of the rock that you're living under. But in Goodfellas, you notice that like there's Henry Hill's voiceover narration going on through the entire movie, and you don't see him talking to us. Then like out of nowhere, like at the final court scene, like he comes and he addresses us and he talks right directly to us. Like it was like that
Yeah.
sudden switch between like this voice that seemed to be like out of the world of the film going into that court scene where he's like in the film and he's talking to us from the world of the film. Whereas in the White Tiger, there's this voice over narration going on the entire time, and then out of nowhere, he starts talking to like random people on the screen itself and in the world of the film itself. I'm like, all right, that seems like a bit of an odd transition. I'm not sure like why they're doing this. I don't think this really works. But even then, just like a
Yeah.
minor, that was just like a minor kink. Um, and again, I agree with your point. Like, there are certain times where the movie felt like, a tiny bit slow. Felt a tiny
Yeah.
bit slow. But overall, I did very
Well, I
much
mean, I
enjoy.
I think they did the narration aspect mainly because of how they edited this. Like they showed a good chunk of some of the end in the beginning, and you're like, okay, where's this going? So I think the narration definitely helped in a lot of ways for that and explaining, and they did try to do something different. It's just that at times, I think the narration kind of went a bit too far, or it's like, okay, we kind of get the premise, like, okay, we're in modern day now. Let's just see his experience now. And I guess they were trying to also add a bit more comedic element to him, which I
Hmm.
didn't think he was all that funny.
I didn't
Or
either.
yeah, so and again, it definitely felt like some of the comedy they were forcing into the character, and not he was a genuine funny character. He was just someone who just was trying to get by, trying wanting to move up, wanting to serve his masters, and then all of a sudden he's like, okay, I'm gonna have to start switching things up now.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, all right. So, what did all of you think of the White Tiger? If there are any other movies you'd like for us to talk about, again, don't be shy. Just leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And again, just before we sign off, don't forget to follow and subscribe to Cinema Unchained on YouTube, as well as Apple and Spotify podcasts. Check out our social media profiles in the description below. If there's anything else you would like us to cover, don't be shy in either directly messaging us or on our social media profiles, or even just giving a shout out in the comment section. And if you're watching this on YouTube, once again, give this video a like and hit the bell to get all notifications. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
see y'all.